The warm rain comes in gentle waves across the plaza, stippling the ancient limestone with dark freckles that spread and merge. You stand near the base of El Castillo, feeling the drops tap against your shoulders, your hair, the back of your neck. Torches have been placed along the edges of the pyramid's terraces, their flames beading the stone with amber light that shivers in the wind. Around you, the crowd begins to murmur, then cheer raggedly, as the moon takes its first bite from the sun. The light shifts, thinning to something strange and flat, and you look up to see the shadow beginning its work. On the north staircase, the famous shadow appears, the first jagged triangle of the serpent materializing on the balustrade as if drawn by an invisible hand. You've read about this, watched videos, studied the geometry, but seeing it in person makes your breath catch. The shadow isn't static. It ripples with the movement of clouds across the eclipsing sun, alive in a way that photographs never capture. You move toward the stairs, testing the first step with your palm. The stone is slick from rain, warm from the day's heat still radiating upward, and you feel it humming. Not literally, but something close. A vibration that might be the drums from the crowd, or might be something deeper, older, resonating through limestone that has stood here for over 1,000 years. You climb to the first terrace landing, perhaps 15 steps up, and position yourself carefully. The rain has made everything treacherous, but you're here for a reason. Your hands are shaking slightly as you bring them together and clap once sharply. The sound cuts through the rain and crowd noise, and the pyramid answers, a bright ascending chirp that sounds exactly like the call of a quetzal bird. It's the famous acoustic effect of El Castillo, the clap echo phenomenon that has amazed visitors for decades, though most don't know that it only works from specific positions, specific angles. You've practiced this at home, clapping against walls, trying to understand the rhythm, the spacing. Now you need to execute it perfectly. You've memorized the pattern, 7 beats, 1 per landing, climbing the pyramid's terraces with mathematical precision. The first clap was exploratory. Now you start the sequence for real. 1. You wait, listening to the chirp decay into the rain-thick air, counting heartbeats. 2. The second clap produces another chirp, slightly different in pitch, harmonizing with the memory of the first. You're watching the serpent-shadow as you do this, and you notice something the tourist guides never mention. When the chirp's timing aligns with your rhythm, the shadow's triangular scales seem to sharpen, edges becoming crisper, more defined. When you rush or delay even slightly, the shadow blurs at the margins. You adjust your stance, shaking rain from your hands. 3. This clap is confident, clean, and the shadow responds with a visible snap of definition. 1. Triangle suddenly vivid against the stone. You're onto something. The crowd below has mostly turned their attention to the eclipse itself, watching the sun die by degrees, but a few people nearby have noticed your careful climbing, your measured claps. A drummer somewhere in the plaza is maintaining a steady pulse, and you latch onto it, letting it guide your internal clock. 4. You're on the third landing now, rain running in small streams down the steps behind you. The serpent's body is beginning to take shape, triangle after triangle linking together in a chain of shadow that descends the balustrade. Each chirp from the pyramid seems to travel through your chest before dispersing into the air, and you're learning to read them, to sense when the echo is true and when it's muddy, absorbed by rain or scattered by wind. The temple, you realize, likes confidence. Tentative claps produce tentative chirps. The stone wants to be spoken to clearly, demanded of, treated like the resonant instrument it is. 5. A priest moves through the crowd below, his headdress catching the torchlight and throwing gold flashes across the plaza. Guards in modern uniforms watch the staircases, ensuring no one climbs too high, but they haven't stopped you yet. Perhaps they're too distracted by the eclipse, or perhaps they recognize something in your deliberate movements, the ritualistic precision of your ascent. A child near the base of the pyramid giggles and tries a clap of her own, and the plaza erupts in laughter as the pyramid chirps back, the sound innocent and joyful. You smile despite your concentration. The temple doesn't discriminate, it sings for anyone who asks properly. 6. You're high enough now that the view has expanded, the plaza spreading below you like a vast dark courtyard scattered with firefly lights from torches and the occasional illegal flash of a smartphone. The light continues to drain from the sky as the eclipse progresses. the world taking on that peculiar quality of wrongness that comes when familiar physics seems to pause. The rain is intensifying, fat drops that splat against the limestone and make every surface gleam. Your palms are starting to sting from the repeated impact, skin reddening, but you don't stop. You're on the 6th landing, one more to go, and the serpent is almost complete, its body a continuous chain of shadow triangles rippling down the stone. You position yourself for the 7th beat, the final one, and as you do, the world flickers. Just for an instant. You see the plaza doubled, overlaid with itself. The torchlit crowd in traditional dress, and a ghostly impression of modern tourists in bright ponchos, their smartphones raised like so many glowing rectangles, recording everything. The two images shimmer over each other, neither quite real, and then the vision snaps back to the present. The torch smoke smells sharper. The edges of everything seem brighter, more defined, as if the world has been brought into sudden focus. 7. You clap with everything you have, and the chirp that returns is perfect, crystalline and bright, hanging in the air longer than physics should allow. The serpent-shadow completes itself, head linking to tail in a closed loop of geometry and light. The torches along the pyramid's edges gutter as if in response, flames bending in unison, and the night shifts around you. The wind drops completely. The sound of the crowd tightens, contracting to circle your heartbeat, and you feel something you've never felt before. Held, suspended, as if the pyramid itself has become aware of you. You're a note being played on an instrument carved from limestone and time, and the resonance travels through your bones. The drumline below continues its steady pulse, and you understand with sudden clarity that the sequence isn't finished. There's a return rule, something you half remember from your research, a warning buried in academic papers and archaeological footnotes. The eclipse is reaching maximum totality, the sun reduced to a burning ring in the sky, and you have a window, brief, precise, to complete the pattern. You need to descend. You need to reverse the rhythm. You move carefully down the rain-slick steps, one landing at a time, until you reach the serpent's stone head at the base of the staircase. This is where the shadow serpent's mouth rests. Carved in relief on the balustrade, jaws perpetually open. You plant your feet at the mouth's edge, rain streaming down your face, and begin the reverse sequence. 7. The clap echoes differently from down here, the chirp lower, more resonant. You're working backward now, peeling away the pattern you just created, and with each beat something in the soundscape changes. 6. The crowd noise seems to peel back, layers of it lifting away like veils. 5. The rain's hiss becomes less insistent, fading to background static. 4. You can hear your own breath now, harsh and quick, the only organic sound in a world of stone and shadow. 3. The drums are still there, but distant as if coming from another room, another time. 2. Everything is tightening down to essentials. Your heartbeat, the rain's dry tick against ancient limestone, the whisper of wind through carved channels. 1. You hold the final beat, waiting for the drums to land to give you the perfect moment. The serpent's mouth, just shadow and stone, begins to darken further, not as if light is leaving it, but as if it's becoming more itself, more present, a depth that shouldn't exist in carved rock. The drumbeat lands, you clap. The mouth becomes a vertical slit of pure shadow, dimensionless, a doorway that has nothing to do with the physical world you know. And between that clap and the echo's return, the world flickers again. This time it's not the plaza that doubles, it's your memory. You see the stairwell of your apartment building, the utilitarian concrete and flickering fluorescent light, and as you watch, a version of yourself climbs those stairs and claps, testing the echo. The stairwell answers with a bright quetzal chirp, the same impossible sound the pyramid makes, and you understand with sickening certainty that something has changed. Something permanent. The successful completion of the sequence has altered an echo in your modern life, transplanted temple acoustics into the mundane geometry of home. But you don't have time to process this because you're falling forward. The serpent's mouth swallowing you, rain turning to hiss, torches to static, stone to something formless and warm and dark. You tumble through space that isn't space, time that moves sideways, and then there's impact. Hard, sudden, real. The smell hits you first, wet concrete. the particular mildew tang of an underground parking garage, ozone from fluorescent lights. You're sprawled on the floor of somewhere modern, somewhere that smells like your city, and when you stand up on shaking legs you recognise the stairwell, your apartment building, your stairwell, the same concrete steps you climb every day, except they're humming now, vibrating with something that definitely wasn't there before. You clap once without thinking, an involuntary test, and the stairwell answers with that bright, perfect chirp, the call of a bird that has never lived in this hemisphere, the acoustic signature of a pyramid 900 miles away. It rings and rings, that impossible sound, bouncing off walls that have no business producing it. Your stairwell will never sound the same. Over the next hours, then days, you discover the extent of what you've done. Ordinary places sing back to you in ways they never did before. The subway platform at your stop. You've stood there hundreds of times, listening to the low rumble of approaching trains, the screech of brakes, the general metallic din. Now when you clap absently while waiting, the platform chirps back bright and clean. An underpass you walk through daily to avoid a busy intersection. Its echo has transformed from a muddy, bass-heavy reverberation to something that pings with crystalline precision, triangular sound shapes that seem to hang in the air like the shadow serpent's scales. Your apartment hallway clicks when you walk it now, each footstep producing a discreet stone-like percussion that reminds you of feet on limestone. At first it's beautiful. You find yourself stopping in unlikely places, clapping just to hear the response, marvelling at how your city has become secretly musical, encoded with temple acoustics. You record some of the sounds on your phone, play them back, confirm that yes, this is really happening. These concrete and steel spaces are somehow generating echoes that belong to a pyramid. But then the unsettling part begins. Crosswalk signals at busy intersections emit their chirp, chirp, chirp to guide the visually impaired, except now that sound gets masked, buried under the new acoustic signatures that bleed through from the temple realm. You find yourself confused at corners, uncertain when it's safe to cross, the familiar audio cues scrambled. Footsteps in parking garages, yours and others, hide themselves in the glossy, reverberant echoes that shouldn't exist in these spaces. You lose track of people walking behind you, their approach masked by the beautiful, impractical soundscape your ritual has created. You try to research what you've done, digging through academic papers and esoteric forums, piecing together references to acoustic time bridges and resonance-based translocation. The clap echo phenomenon at Chichen Itza isn't just a curiosity of architecture, it's a mechanism, carefully designed, that maps sonic patterns onto space-time in ways modern physics doesn't account for. By completing the 7-beat sequence during an eclipse, during the brief window when the serpent-shadow links head to tail, you've established a permanent connection. Each successful trip through the serpent's mouth rewrites one echo in your modern life, transplanting temple acoustics into the prosaic world you depend on, and you can still travel. That's what you discover on the third night, standing in your apartment hallway at 2 a.m, unable to sleep because your building has become too alive with sound. You can trace the pattern again, find the right architectural geometry, execute the 7 beats with precision, time it to your heartbeat, and step through into the pyramid's realm, into rain and torchlight, and the press of ancient crowds. You can stand in the plaza and feel the stones hum, breathe smoke and petrichor, experience the vertigo of being unstuck in the ordinary flow of time. But each trip costs you. Each successful sequence rewrites another echo. The parking garage at your office building begins to ping like a temple chamber. The pedestrian bridge over the highway starts to throw quetzal chirps when trucks pass underneath. The acoustic landmarks you've unconsciously relied on to navigate your city, the particular way your favourite coffee shop sounds, the echo pattern of the library reading room, the specific reverberation of your local grocery store. These are being overwritten, one by one, replaced with limestone signatures that belong to a different time, a different purpose. You become careful about where you clap, paranoid about triggering the response. You start wearing headphones constantly, flooding your ears with music to mask the temple sounds. But it doesn't really help because the acoustics are real, physical, not auditory hallucinations. Other people don't seem to notice, or if they do, they dismiss it as quirks of the buildings, odd reverberations they've never paid attention to before. Only you know the truth. Only you feel the weight of what you've done. 2 weeks after the eclipse, you stand in a parking structure near downtown, rain falling through the open levels in sheets, and you test the pattern again. Your hands move through the 7-beat sequence almost automatically now, muscle memory encoded from that night at the pyramid. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the structure responds, chirping back in perfect pitch, each echo sharper than the last. The serpent-shadow materializes in your mind's eye, not physically present but vivid enough to follow, and you feel the fabric between times growing thin, preparing to tear. You could step through. The doorway is there, forming in the deeper shadows between concrete pillars, a vertical slit that smells like warm rain and torch smoke. You could return to the plaza, to the ceremony, to that perfect suspension where the pyramid holds you like a resonant note. But you hesitate, hands still raised, breath fogging in the cold air because you know what it will cost. The parking structure where you're standing will keep its new acoustics permanently. Another piece of your navigational soundscape will be rewritten. And if you keep going, if you chase the perfection of the ritual again and again, eventually you'll transform your entire city into a temple, beautiful and impractical, unsuited for the ordinary business of living. The rain intensifies, hammering on the concrete levels above, and you make a decision. You lower your hands. You step back from the forming doorway and watch it fade, the shadow receding, the connection not severed but left dormant. The parking structure still chirps when sound moves through it, still carries that limestone signature, but you don't deepen the bridge. You don't take the step that would pull you back to torchlight and drums. Walking home through rain-dark streets, you practice a different rhythm, beats tapped silently on your chest, a pattern you keep internal, private. The plaza's music is still there, carried in your heartbeat, in the muscle memory of your hands, in the way you time your steps to the remembered drumline. You don't need to carve it into every concrete surface to keep it. You can hold it inside, a secret resonance that doesn't require the world to reshape itself around your experience. Over the following weeks, you learn to navigate the altered soundscape. You memorize which corners have been rewritten, which pedestrian paths now carry temple acoustics that mask the normal urban cues. You adjust, adapt, find new ways to orient yourself that don't depend on the familiar echoes. The crosswalk signals remain problematic, but you learn to look more carefully, to double-check the lights rather than trusting the audio. Footsteps in garages. You become more visually aware, glancing over your shoulder more often. The temptation never entirely leaves. There are nights when you stand in your apartment listening to the hallway click with each passing neighbour, and you think about the plaza, about the way the rain felt on limestone, about the precision of the shadow serpent's scales snapping into focus, about being held in that impossible suspension, a note played on an instrument built to bridge centuries. You think about the priest's gold headdress flashing in torchlight, the child's laugh when the pyramid chirped back, the way the night felt when wind dropped and sound contracted to your heartbeat. But you also think about what you'd lose. Not just the practical navigation of your city, though that matters, but something harder to articulate. The sense of home as home, not as echo of elsewhere. The ordinary thuds and scrapes and reverberations that mark familiar spaces that tell you where you are without thinking. The prosaic soundscape you've lived in all your life, unglamorous but yours, mapped to your movements and memories in ways that don't require perfection. On a clear night 3 months later, you return to Chichen Itza, not physically, but in memory, in that space between waking and sleeping where the pattern still lives. You stand in the plaza with rain freckling the limestone, torches beading the pyramid's edges, the moon taking its bite from the sun. You climb the stairs landing by landing, palm testing the warm slick stone, and you clap the sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The serpent-shadow ripples alive, scales clicking into place, and you feel the world thin around you, feel the temple reaching out to hold you in resonance. But you don't complete the return sequence. You stand at the serpent's mouth with your palms hovering, heartbeat aligned with the phantom drumline, and you choose not to descend in reverse. You choose to walk away from the forming doorway, to keep that particular echo unrealized. The plaza music stays inside you, tapped rhythms on your chest, silent patterns that guide your steps. But it doesn't bleed further into the concrete and steel of home. You wake in your apartment with rain tapping the windows, and the hallway outside still clicks when you walk it, still carries that limestone signature from the first crossing. The parking structure downtown still chirps, the subway platform still sings. These alterations are permanent, marks of the night the serpent descended and pulled you through its shadow mouth. But they're limited now, contained, a partial rewriting rather than a complete transformation. You've learned to live with them, these temple acoustics scattered through your modern life. Sometimes they're beautiful. You'll turn a corner and hear that bright quetzal chirp and remember torchlight, remember rain, remember being held in the pyramid's resonance. Sometimes they're frustrating, practical hindrances that require workarounds and extra attention. But they're yours now, part of your specific geography, sounds that no one else hears quite the way you do. And you carry the pattern still, the 7-beat sequence encoded in your hands, ready if you ever need it. The doorway remains available, the serpent's mouth waiting in deeper shadows, torch smoke and warm rain just a rhythm away. You could return. You could complete another sequence, rewrite. Another echo, chase that perfect suspension one more time. But for now you walk through your city, feet clicking on ordinary concrete, and practice the silent drumline. Beats tapped on your chest that belong entirely to you, that reshape nothing but your own internal landscape. The plaza's music lives there, held safe, not carved into every surface but preserved in the spaces between heartbeats, in the rhythm of your breath, in the careful timing of steps that carry you home through rain-dark streets that are slowly, imperfectly, learning to be themselves again. But for now you walk through your city, feet clicking on ordinary concrete, and practice the silent drumline. Beats tapped on your chest that belong entirely to you, that reshape nothing but your own internal landscape. The plaza's music lives there, held safe, not carved into every surface but preserved in the spaces between heartbeats, in the rhythm of your breath, in the careful timing of steps that carry you home through rain, dark streets that are slowly, imperfectly, learning to be themselves again. 4 months pass, and autumn arrives with its own kind of rain. Colder, sharper, nothing like the warm drops that freckled the plaza. You've settled into a routine that accommodates the altered acoustics. You take different routes to work that avoid the most problematic echo zones. You've learned to trust visual cues over audio ones in situations where the temple sounds create confusion. Your apartment building's clicking hallway has become almost comforting, a nightly reminder of where you've been, what you've touched. But something else is developing, something you didn't anticipate. Other people are starting to notice patterns you've left behind. Not the acoustic changes, those remain largely invisible to anyone who wasn't paying attention to the soundscapes before, but something more subtle. A street musician who plays saxophone near the subway entrance where the platform chirps has begun incorporating those exact pitches into his improvisations. He doesn't know why those notes feel right, why they seem to resonate with the space in ways other melodies don't, but you hear it every time you pass. He's playing the pyramid song without realizing it. A sound engineer who works in the office building with the rewritten parking garage has started using recordings from that space in her ambient music project. You discover this by accident, scrolling through a local artist's playlist, and there it is, the distinctive ping and crystalline reverb of limestone acoustics rendered in parking garage concrete. She's titled the track Unexpected Resonance, and in the description she writes about stumbling onto these sounds, about how they seem to appear overnight, about the mysterious way certain spaces in the city have become more alive. You should feel guilty about this unintended propagation, but instead you feel something closer to wonder. The pattern is escaping your control, finding its own expression through people who have no idea what they're channeling. The temple wants to be heard, and it's using whatever instruments it can find, a saxophone, a digital recorder, the unconscious humming of a barista who works in the coffee shop near your altered pedestrian bridge. Winter comes, and with it your first real crisis. You're walking home late from a friend's apartment, cutting through the parking structure to avoid icy sidewalks, when you hear voices echoing in the levels above. 2 voices, young, probably teenagers, and they're experimenting with the acoustics, clapping and laughing as the structure chirps back at them. You freeze between parked cars, listening as they stumble through variations, clearly delighted by the discovery. Then one of them finds it. Accidentally, without training or intention, they clap out a pattern that's close enough to the 7-beat sequence to trigger a response. The air between concrete pillars shimmers, thickens, and you see the vertical slit beginning to form, that doorway of shadow that smells like torch smoke and rain. The teenagers see it too. Their laughter cuts off abruptly, replaced by confused silence. One of them whispers, "What the hell is that?" You move without thinking, stepping into view and clapping loudly, deliberately off rhythm, breaking the pattern. The doorway wavers and collapses, shadow returning to ordinary shadow, and the teenagers spin toward you, faces pale in the fluorescent light. You make yourself smile, gesture casually at the space. Weird echo in here, right? Freaks me out sometimes. Your voice sounds steadier than you feel. They relax slightly, looking between you and the spot where the doorway almost formed. "Yeah," one of them says slowly. "Weird echo?" They leave quickly after that, footsteps receding down the ramp, and you're left alone with your hammering heart and the realization that the doorways don't only respond to you. Anyone with the right rhythm, intentional or accidental, can trigger them. You've scattered these potential crossings throughout your city, and you have no way to control who might find them. Sleep doesn't come easily that night. You lie in bed listening to your building settle, the familiar clicks and pings of your rewritten acoustics, and consider the implications. How many other people might stumble onto the pattern? What happens if someone steps through unprepared, without understanding the cost, without knowing how to return? You imagine teenagers appearing in the plaza during an eclipse ceremony, confused and frightened, or worse, lost in the space between times, trapped in that warm dark tunnel where rain turns to static. The next morning you begin a project you've been avoiding. You map every location in your city where you've completed a sequence, every space where the temple acoustics have taken root. Using a notebook and a city map, you mark them carefully. The parking structures, the subway platforms, the pedestrian bridges and underpasses, your apartment building, your office. 12 sites in total, 12 potential doorways scattered across the urban landscape like hidden mines. You start visiting them systematically, one per day, testing the acoustics to confirm they're still active. They are. Every single site still carries the limestone signature, still responds with that bright quetzal chirp when you clap. At each location, you try to understand what made you choose it. What about these spaces called to you strongly enough that you enacted the ritual? Most were places you passed through regularly in that first confused week after your return, when you were still learning the extent of what you'd done. A few were deliberate experiments, attempts to understand the mechanism. All of them are now permanently changed. At the pedestrian bridge over the highway, you stand in falling snow and watch rush hour traffic below, listening to the way trucks passing underneath trigger those impossible chirps. You're not the only one who's noticed. Someone has started leaving offerings here, small arrangements of stones and feathers on the bridge's railing. You don't know if they understand what they're doing, whether they sense the temple presence intuitively, or if they're just responding to the space feeling sacred in a way it didn't before. Either way, the offerings continue to appear, replaced and refreshed, maintained by unknown hands. You meet someone at the coffee shop near your office, a woman who always sits at the corner table, and over several weeks of casual conversation, you learn she's an anthropologist specializing in urban sacred spaces. She talks about how cities develop their own pilgrimage sites, often in unexpected locations, highway underpasses, subway platforms, anonymous concrete structures that suddenly become invested with significance. It's like the sacred finds cracks to seep through, she says, stirring her coffee, unaware that you're one of those cracks. Places that shouldn't matter become places people feel compelled to visit. You want to tell her everything. The words build behind your teeth, the eclipse, the serpent-shadow, the 7-beat pattern that rewrites acoustics and opens doorways through time. But you swallow them back because what would be the point? She wouldn't believe you. Or if she did, she'd want to study it, document it, bring attention that would only make everything more dangerous. So instead, you ask about her research, and she describes patterns she's noticed. Spontaneous shrines appearing in the most unlikely places, always in locations with unusual acoustic properties. There's this parking garage downtown, she says, and your coffee cup freezes halfway to your mouth. 4th level, near the southeast corner. Someone's been leaving coins there, arranging them in patterns. I've been photographing the arrangements. They're surprisingly sophisticated, almost like they're mapping something. She pulls out her phone, shows you images of coins laid out in triangular shapes that you recognize immediately. The serpent scales, the shadow pattern from the pyramid's balustrade. Your hands are shaking. That parking garage, that's one of your sites, a place where you completed the sequence during a moment of reckless experimentation. Someone has found it, sensed something there, started responding to the temple presence in the only way they know how, and the pattern they're creating, even without understanding its origin, mirrors the geometry that made it possible. The anthropologist notices your reaction. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just cold," you lie, setting down your cup. "The weather's getting to me." But it's not the weather. It's the realization that the temple isn't content to remain passive, isn't satisfied with just colouring the acoustics of your city. It's calling to people, drawing them to the altered sites, teaching them the patterns through intuition and dream logic. You wonder how many others are experiencing what you experienced. The doubled vision, the flickering memories, the sense of being held in resonance. You wonder if any of them have stepped through yet, or if they're all still circling the doorways, leaving offerings, arranging coins, feeling the pull without understanding its source. You start having dreams that aren't quite dreams. In them you walk through the plaza at Chichen Itza, but it's overlaid with your city, the pyramid rising where your office building stands, the bull court where the subway station should be, the cenote opening in the middle of an intersection. Other people walk through this doubled space, some in traditional dress with jade and feathers, others in modern clothes carrying smartphones and coffee cups. None of them seem surprised by the overlap. They navigate both geographies simultaneously, moving through time like it's just another kind of space. In one dream you see the child who laughed at your claps during the eclipse ceremony. She's older now, maybe 14, and she's teaching someone else the pattern, a friend, another girl about her age. They're standing in your altered parking structure, and the older girl is explaining how to space the claps, how to listen for the temple's response. "My grandmother taught me," she says in the dream, "though you know that's impossible because you were the one who brought the pattern back. You were the first." But in dream logic it makes perfect sense. The knowledge has its own lineage now, passed down through whatever channels the sacred uses when it decides to propagate. You wake from these dreams with your chest tight, the silent drumline pulsing beneath your ribs. Sometimes you find yourself tapping the pattern unconsciously, on your desk at work, on the steering wheel of your car, on the edge of your dinner plate. Your hands remember the sequence more perfectly than your mind does, and they want to execute it to complete it, to open more doors. Spring arrives with thunderstorms that remind you of the plaza. You're caught in one while walking home, rain soaking through your jacket, and without thinking you detour to the nearest of your altered sites, the underpass that pings with crystalline precision. You stand there dripping, listening to the rain hammer on concrete above, and you realise that the acoustics have evolved. The temple sounds are richer now, more layered, as if they've had time to settle into the modern materials, to learn how to speak through rebar and aggregate instead of limestone blocks. You clap once, experimentally, and the response is extraordinary. A complex chord of chirps, harmonics you've never heard before, overtones that seem to come from multiple time periods simultaneously. The underpass is becoming a more sophisticated instrument, developing capabilities that the pyramid itself might not possess. You understand then that this isn't just transplantation, isn't just temple acoustics imposing themselves on modern spaces, it's hybridization. The two soundscapes are learning from each other, creating something new. A figure appears at the far end of the underpass, silhouetted against streetlights. You tense, expecting a confrontation, but as they walk closer, you recognize the anthropologist from the coffee shop. She's holding an umbrella, and her expression when she sees you is knowing, unsurprised, as if she's been waiting for this meeting. "You've been leaving the patterns," she says. Not a question. There's no point denying it. "I didn't leave them. I opened something and they appeared." She nods slowly, stepping closer. Rain drums on her umbrella, and in the space beneath it you can see her eyes are bright with fascination rather than fear. "I've been tracking them for months, 12 sites, all connected to you. I've seen you at each one, taking notes, testing the sounds. I didn't understand what you were doing until I started having the dreams." Your breath catches. "The plaza, the overlap." "The plaza," she confirms. "And the serpent and the rain and the feeling of being..." She struggles for words. "Played. Like an instrument. Like the whole city is becoming an instrument and we're the notes being sounded." She looks around the underpass, at the rain-slicked walls, listening to the complex harmonics still echoing from your clap. "What did you do? What did you open?" So you tell her. Standing in the underpass with rain providing percussion, you describe the eclipse at Chichen Itza, the 7-beat sequence, the shadow serpent linking head to tail. You explain the cost, the rewritten echoes, the acoustic landmarks erased and replaced. You describe stepping through the serpent's mouth, falling through warm darkness, landing in your ordinary stairwell transformed. You show her the pattern, tapping it out on your chest, the silent rhythm you've been carrying for months. She listens without interrupting, and when you finish, she's quiet for a long time, processing. Finally, she says, "You're worried about what you've started, about who might follow." Teenagers almost stepped through one of the doorways last winter. They didn't know what they were doing, just stumbled onto the rhythm by accident. What happens to them if they cross over unprepared? Maybe nothing, she says thoughtfully. Maybe the temple knows the difference between intentional contact and accident. Or maybe, she pauses, choosing words carefully, maybe it's time to stop thinking of this as something you did wrong and start thinking of it as something you discovered. A phenomenon that was always there, waiting for the right conditions to become visible. You want to believe her, but the weight of responsibility sits heavy on your chest, pressing down with the same insistence as the silent drumline. Every time someone crosses, they rewrite another echo. Eventually the whole city could be transformed, unrecognizable. Or, she counters, eventually the city becomes a living bridge between times, a place where past and present aren't separate but overlapping. Maybe that's not a disaster. Maybe that's an evolution. The conversation stays with you through the following weeks as spring deepens into summer. You meet with the anthropologist regularly now, sharing observations, comparing notes on the altered sites. She started documenting everything properly, not for publication, she assures you, but for understanding. She brings other people into the conversation, carefully chosen. A sound engineer who specialises in architectural acoustics, a physicist interested in temporal mechanics, a musician who's been incorporating the temple sounds into his compositions without knowing their source. They form a loose collective, these people drawn to your accidentally sacred spaces. They don't try to exploit the phenomenon or draw public attention to it. Instead, they treat the sites with respect, almost reverence, visiting them regularly to monitor changes, leaving their own small offerings, learning to hear the layers of sound that indicate when the doorways might be close to forming, and slowly, carefully, a few of them start to attempt the crossing. The musician goes first, on a night when storms roll through with lightning that feels properly ceremonial. You guide him through the 7-beat sequence at one of the more stable sites, helping him understand the rhythm, the breathing, the way to listen for the pyramid's response in concrete and steel. When the doorway forms, you stand beside him at its threshold, and together you watch him step through, watch him dissolve into warm shadow and torch smoke. He's gone for what feels like hours, but measures as minutes on your watch. When he returns, stumbling back through the doorway into ordinary parking structure light, his face is transformed, not frightened, but awed, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I heard it," he keeps saying. "The drums, the actual drums, and the rain on those stones. It's not like rain here, it's..." He can't finish, overcome, and you understand perfectly because you've been carrying those sensations in your body since the eclipse. The sound engineer goes next, then the physicist. Each crossing rewrites another echo somewhere in the city, adds another layer to the hybridized acoustics. But it doesn't feel like loss anymore, doesn't feel like damage. It feels like the city is developing a richer vocabulary, learning to speak in multiple temporal dialects simultaneously. Your coffee shop begins to carry temple harmonics. A public library starts to ping with limestone precision. A hospital waiting room develops a chirp that sounds like comfort in stone. People notice these changes, but they interpret them generously, attributing them to renovations, new construction materials, improved acoustic design. The city's soundscape is evolving, they say, becoming more interesting, more alive. No one suspects that what they're hearing is the voice of an ancient pyramid teaching modern spaces how to sing. The next story is about to begin. Please relax and enjoy. The rain comes warm, hissing where it strikes the hot stone of the lantern room. You lean into the great bronze mirror, feeling its weight resist the crank even as your shoulders burn. The mirror is spider-cracked, a lattice of fractures spreading from a dark centre like frozen lightning, but it still catches the oil fire guttering in the copper brazier behind you. Each rotation throws a ragged beam across the harbour, a sick yellow finger of light that stutters where the cracks intersect. You wipe rain from your face and look out through the eastern opening. The storm has turned the Mediterranean into a churning slate, waves shouldering against the breakwater with rhythmic thunder that you feel through your feet. But it's what you see between the waves that stops your hand on the crank. In the rain-smeared distance, impossible flashes. A container crane, rust red against the storm, its lights blinking in sequence. The blue-white glare of sodium lamps along what should be empty rock. The clean concrete line of a modern breakwater extending past where the Hepta Stadium causeway ends. Your city, your time, bleeding through. A conch call rises from the harbour, low, desperate, answered by another further out. Ships feeling their way towards safety as the storm drives them onto the shoals. You've been keeper of the Pharaohs for 3 years, and you know that sound. It's the sound of men who think they're about to die. "Keeper!" The shout comes from the stairwell, barely audible over the wind. Nessos bursts into the lantern room, his young face slick with rain and oil smoke. He's your assistant. 16 and wiry, always moving too fast. He presses something into your wet hands, a rolled papyrus, the vellum soft with moisture. "The sky letter," he gasps. "The old keeper's chart. You need to see." You unroll it with fumbling fingers. It's a star map, but not like the navigation charts you learned in school. This one shows constellations traced in thick black ink, but between the stars someone has drawn lines, patterns, angles. Notes crowd the margins in ancient Greek, the letters running together. You recognise a few words: persuade, see, mirror, home. What is this? Nessos grabs your shoulder, turns you toward the eastern opening. When you sweep the beam, watch. When it crosses the bear, the water. You're already cranking the mirror faster now. The beam swings across the harbour mouth, illuminating rain and spray. It touches the horizon, and you see it. The water goes glass still for a single breath. The modern skyline sharpens. You can read the letters on a billboard, in English, advertising something you can't make out before the beam passes and the storm rushes back. "The keepers have been doing this for generations," Nessos says, his voice pitched high with excitement or fear. "Tracing patterns to calm the sea, to call ships home. But the mirror, it cracked during the last omen, and now it's doing something else," you finish. Your hands are shaking. You look down at the chart, at the constellation traced in the centre. Orion. Your home constellation. The one your father taught you to find on clear nights from your balcony. 3,000 years and a lifetime away. A deep groan rises from below, metal on stone. Footsteps on the stairs, heavy and many. The chief engineer arrives first, his face grey beneath his tan. "The counterweight is jammed," he announces without preamble. "The rotation mechanism, something bent in the last tremor. You'll have to crank manually." Behind him, 2 slaves carry amphorae of oil, sloshing and heavy. "Last of the reserve," one mutters. "Maybe 2 hours' worth if the wind doesn't." "It's enough." You say it with more confidence than you feel. You're already doing the math. 2 hours of oil, manual cranking, the storm eye moving at how fast? You remember the satellite loop on your weather app, the slow spiral of the system. The eye should pass over the lighthouse in maybe 60 minutes, maybe less. The third man to enter the lantern room makes your stomach clench. Roman uniform, the red cloak dark with rain. Tribune Gaius, the garrison commander, and he's looking at the mirror with the expression of someone who's made a decision and doesn't care about the cost. "Keeper," he says, and it's not a greeting. "By order of the prefect, you will dim the light." "What?" "Enemy ships, Phoenician raiders or Cilician pirates. Intelligence is unclear, but they're using the storm as cover, and if we guide them to harbour, there are our ships out there." You point toward the conch calls still rising from the dark. Fishing boats, merchants, maybe a naval patrol, which is precisely why we cannot illuminate the harbour entrance. Dim the light, keep it low until the storm passes. "They'll die on the shoals." Gaius's hand moves to his sword hilt. "That is not your decision, Keeper. This is a military matter." You look at Nessos, at the engineer, at the 2 slaves. The engineer is carefully studying the brazier. Nessos's jaw is clenched so tight you can see the muscle jump. The slaves have already started backing toward the stairs. "Get out," you say to Gaius. His eyes narrow. "What?" "Get out of my lighthouse. I answer to the prefect, not to you, and until he walks up these stairs himself, I'm keeping the light burning." You move to block his path to the brazier, to the mirror. "Get out." For a moment you think he's going to draw the sword. His hand tightens on the hilt, knuckles white, then he spins on his heel and stalks toward the stairs. "The prefect will hear about this," he throws over his shoulder, "and when the raiders burn the grain quarter, remember, that blood is on your hands." The engineer waits until the footsteps fade before speaking. He'll be back, with soldiers. I know. You turn to Nessos, to the star chart. Show me exactly what I need to do. Nessos spreads the papyrus on the stone floor, weighing the corners with bronze sighting tools. His finger traces the constellation, Orion, the hunter, hanging over the southern horizon. 7 stars for the main pattern. You need to sweep the beam so it connects them, 1 to 1, in order. Betelgeuse to Rigel, Rigel to Bellatrix. His finger moves across the chart, tracing invisible lines. When you complete the pattern, the storm eye will centre on the beam. The old keeper called it the gate. Your only gate home. Home. The word feels strange in your mouth. You look out at the harbour, at the rain-blurred lights of a city that doesn't exist yet and shouldn't be visible. What happens to here? To now? Nessos shakes his head. I don't know. The chart doesn't say. But Keeper... He looks up at you, and you see real fear in his eyes. Every sweep changes something. The last keeper, before the mirror cracked, he tried to map a constellation he didn't know. When he finished, half the harbour district had different names. Buildings he swore had been there were gone. His own house, he swallows. His wife didn't recognise him. The wind gusts through the eastern opening, scattering rain across the star chart. You grab it before it can blow away, the vellum already darkening with water. 7 stars, maybe 60 minutes before the eye passes. You do the calculation, 9 sweeps per star, accounting for the crank speed and the mirror's rotation. 63 sweeps total if you don't stop, if the oil holds, if the mirror doesn't shatter completely, if Gaius doesn't come back with soldiers. Help me set up the pattern, you tell Nessos. I need reference points, something I can sight against to keep the beam accurate. The engineer steps forward. I can rig a plumb line from the top of the mirror housing. You sight along it, adjust the crank speed to keep the beam tracking. He's already moving, pulling rope from a coil near the wall, but Keeper, manually cranking for an hour. I'll manage. You won't, but what choice is there? It takes 10 minutes to rig the sighting system. 10 minutes while the conch calls grow more desperate, while the storm builds toward its peak. You can feel it in the pressure, in the way the rain changes angle, in the deep subsonic rumble that might be thunder or might be the sea itself. Finally, you position yourself at the crank, one eye on the plumb line, one on the harbour. Nessos stands ready with the star chart, calling out adjustments. The engineer feeds oil to the brazier, keeping the flame steady. You take a breath, taste salt and smoke, and begin. The first sweep is experimental, feeling for the angle. The beam swings across the water, illuminating whitecaps and spray. You're aiming for Betelgeuse, the red giant that marks Orion's shoulder. In your time, in your sky, you could find it with your eyes closed. Here, you squint at the cloud cover, at the rain, trying to see through to where the stars should be. More east, Nessos calls. 3 degrees, no, 5. There, the beam. Steadies. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then the water beneath the light goes still, glass smooth, and you see it clearly. Your city's waterfront, the breakwater, the lights of cars moving along the corniche. And something else, a shimmer in the air, like heat haze, like reality bending. You crank harder, pulling the beam toward the second star, Rigel, the blue giant at the hunter's foot. The mirror groans, the crack widening with a sound like ice breaking, but the beam holds, stuttering but steady, and you trace the line from Betelgeuse down. There! Nessos shouts. Hold it! Hold! The beam connects. For an instant you see both harbours superimposed, ancient and modern, galleys and cargo ships, stone and steel. Then the light passes and everything snaps back. You're gasping, your shoulders already burning, but you've completed the first link. Below, a new sound. Shouts, many voices, soldiers' boots on stone. Gaius is coming back. Keep going, Nessos urges. We can barricade. No. You're already moving to the second link, Rigel to Bellatrix. Just keep calling the angles. Don't stop. The second sweep goes faster. You're finding the rhythm now, the pattern. The crank fights you, the bent mechanism catching every third rotation, but you lean your weight into it and force it through. The beam tracks across the storm, and again the water stills, again the shimmer. But this time, when you glance at the harbour, something is different. The stone quay where the fishing boats tie up, you could swear it had a different name. Not the canopic quay, something else, something older. something you remember from your morning walks before you ended up here. But when you try to focus on the memory, it slides away, replaced by certainty. It's always been the canopic key. Always. Keeper, Nessos grabs your arm. Your phone. Look. You fumble it from your pocket with numb fingers. The screen is cracked, wet, but it still glows. The map app is open. You had it running when the storm hit, when the first impossible rain drove you up into the lantern room. The blue dot marks your position atop the Pharos, but the labels on the map, the street names there. Canopic key, you read aloud. The word feels wrong in your mouth, too formal, too ancient. But the English letters are clear on the screen. You're certain, absolutely certain, that 5 minutes ago it said something else, but you can't remember what. It's starting, Nessos whispers. Each sweep, it's rewriting the names, making them match. Match what? Here, now, this time. He points at the harbour, at the ancient city spread below the lighthouse. You're stitching the two together. Every connection you make, the names bleed through. Thunder drowns out whatever he says next. You pocket the phone and grab the crank, fighting through the fear. Third link, Bellatrix to Scythe. Your shoulders scream, but you pull harder, watching the plumb line, listening to Nessos call the angles. The beam swings wide, catches a ship, a trireme, oars flashing in the light, and you see the crew cheering, pointing up at the Pharos. You just saved those lives. But what are you doing to your own? The door at the base of the stairs crashes open. Boots on stone, coming up fast. Gaius didn't waste time. How many soldiers? You ask the engineer. He glances down the stairwell. 10, maybe more. Keeper, they'll help me move the beam cart. It's a heavy wooden frame used for transporting replacement mirrors. You and the engineer muscle it across the floor, wedging it against the door to the lantern room. It won't hold long, but it might buy minutes. You're back at the crank before the first soldier hits the barricade. The door shudders but holds. You start the fourth sweep, Scythe to Alnitak, and the whole tower groans. Not from the soldiers, from something deeper, a vibration in the stone itself, as if the lighthouse is remembering something or trying to forget. Halfway through the sweep, the mirror catches a gust of wind and spins too fast. The beam whips across the harbour, touching stars at random, and the effect is immediate and terrifying. The water convulses, ancient and modern churning together. You see a container ship flicker into existence beside a Roman galley. You see the breakwater twist, stone and concrete braiding together like rope. The air fills with a sound like glass singing. "Control it!" Nessos is screaming. "You have to control the pattern." You drag the mirror back, force it to the correct angle. The hallucination snaps shut, leaving only the storm, but your hands are shaking so badly you nearly lose your grip on the crank. The door splinters. A spear point punches through the wood, misses the engineer's shoulder by a finger's width. Gaius's voice. "Break it down! Now!" "I need to confess something," Nessos says suddenly. He's staring at the mirror, at the crack spreading across its surface. The mirror. It didn't crack during an omen. It cracked because of me. You don't stop cranking, but you turn your head enough to see him. He's crying, tears mixing with rain. "I dropped it," he whispers. "When we were polishing the surface, I dropped the bronze weight. The old keeper, he saw, but he didn't report me. He said the mirror was old anyway, that it would crack soon regardless. But I know it's my fault it's failing now." Another impact on the door. The beam cart shifts, wood groaning. Maybe 30 seconds before they break through. "Listen to me." You have to shout over the wind. "It doesn't matter how it cracked. What matters is what we do now. Can you help me finish this?" He nods, wiping his face. Yes, keeper." "Then get ready. When they come through that door, I need you to keep calling the angles. Don't stop, no matter what happens. Understand?" "I understand." The fifth sweep. Alnitak to Alnilam. The first 2 stars of Orion's belt. Your whole body is shaking now, muscles pushed past their limit. But the rhythm is there, burned into your nerves, and you follow it. The beam traces the line, the water stills, and this time when you look at the harbour you see people. Figures on the quay, watching the lighthouse. Some are wearing chitons and cloaks, some are wearing t-shirts and jeans. They exist in the same space, the same moment, translucent and overlapping. The beam cart explodes inward, kicked apart by armoured boots. Gaius storms through, sword drawn, 6 soldiers behind him. "Seize the keeper!" he roars. But the engineer is already moving. He grabs a polished shield from the wall, one of the backup reflectors, kept for repairs, and holds it up in the path of the main beam. The light catches the shield's surface and splits, throwing a scatter of smaller beams across the lantern room. One hits Gaius in the face, blinding him. He staggers back, sword swinging wildly. "Keep cranking," the engineer shouts at you. You crank. Al-Nilam to Mintaka, the last link in the belt. Nessos is calling angles, his voice cracking, but you trust him. The beam finds the line, holds it, and the tower shudders again. This time you feel something shift in your chest, in your memory. You remember walking on the Hepta Stadium causeway this morning. No, the causeway is ancient, it's half ruined. No, you definitely walked it. You remember the coffee cart at the halfway point, the vendor who always... The memory fractures. You can't hold both versions. The causeway is modern, paved with asphalt. The causeway is ancient, built by Alexander's engineers. It's both. It's neither. The contradiction makes your skull ache. Gaius has recovered, wiping his eyes. "Kill the flame," he orders the soldiers. "Do it now." Two of them rush the brazier. Nessos throws himself in their path, too small to stop them but brave enough to try. They knock him aside, reaching for the oil shutters. The engineer swings the shield like a weapon, the bronze edge catching one soldier across the helmet. The man drops, but the other reaches the brazier, starts closing the shutters, and the lighthouse screams. Not a human sound, not the wind. The stone itself, the foundations 300 feet below, the whole massive structure crying out like something alive and wounded. The soldier at the brazier stumbles back, hands over his ears. Everyone freezes, including you. For 3 heartbeats, nothing moves. Then the eastern wall cracks, a deep fissure running from ceiling to floor, and through it you see the storm and something else. Something impossible. Lightning. But it's not falling from clouds. It's rising from the water, blue-white tendrils reaching up toward the lighthouse's peak, toward the beam. "The eye!" Nessos gasps. He's pulling himself up, blood running from his nose. "It's coming. Keeper, you have to finish the pattern before..." Thunder obliterates his words. The lightning touches the lantern room, grounds itself in the bronze mirror, and for an instant everything becomes light. Pure, white, absolute. You can't see, can't hear, can only feel the crank in your hands and keep turning, following the pattern burned into your muscles. When your vision clears, the soldiers are gone. Gaius is gone. The engineer is slumped against the wall, breathing hard but alive. Nessos is beside you, one hand on your shoulder, steadying you. "2 more links," he says. His voice is calm now, certain. Mintaka to Rigel, then Rigel back to Betelgeuse. The pattern completes. "How much time?" "Look." You look up through the broken wall. The clouds are moving, rotating, and at the centre, clear air. Stars. The storm eye, maybe 5 minutes away, maybe less, spinning directly toward the pharaohs. "Oil?" you ask the engineer. He checks the brazier, the amphory. "Enough?" "Barely. If you don't stop." "I won't stop." But your body might. Your arms are numb, your shoulders grinding bone on bone. You've been cranking for how long? 40 minutes, an hour. Time has become elastic, unreliable. You focus on the next sweep, only the next sweep. Mintaka to Rigel, the long diagonal across Orion's form. The crank catches, the bent mechanism fighting you. You lean your full weight into it, feel something tear in your shoulder, keep pushing. The beam swings out, finds the angle Nessos calls. The water stills, and this time the harbour doesn't just shimmer, it stabilises. Ancient and modern locked together, no longer flickering but solid, real, both existing simultaneously. On the quay below, the translucent figures solidify. You see a woman in a chiton carrying an amphora. You see a man in a business suit checking his phone. They walk past each other without acknowledgement, as if they've always shared this space, as if the 3,000 years between them is nothing but a word, a label, arbitrary and meaningless. Your phone buzzes in your pocket. You want to check it, but you can't let go of the crank. Nessos pulls it out for you, holds it up. The map is redrawing itself live, streets and districts shifting, names flowing like water. Pharos Ward, Hepta Stadium Road, Canopic Square. English words, Greek roots, all the landmarks of your city renamed with echoes of the ancient world. "One more," Nessos whispers. "Rigel to Betelgeuse. Close the circuit." The storm eye is overhead now, the wall of churning cloud forming a perfect cylinder around the pharaohs. Inside the eye, the air is still, the rain stopped. Stars blaze overhead, impossibly bright, and you can see Orion clearly. Not on a chart, not in your memory, but there, directly above, waiting. You start the final sweep. The crank screams, the mirrors crack, spreading with sounds like small caliber gunfire. But the beam holds, tracking from Rigel's blue fire toward Betelgeuse's red glow. The water below becomes glass, becomes mercury, becomes something that isn't water at all but a surface, a membrane between moments. Halfway through the sweep, the mirror seizes. The bent mechanism jams completely. Metal, grinding on stone. You pull harder, throwing all your remaining strength into it, but it won't move. The shutter, Nessos says, we can manually adjust. No. The engineer pushes past him, grabs the crank beside you. Together, on 3. You count. On 3, you both pull. The crank shifts an inch, 2 inches. The beam continues its arc, agonizingly slow, creeping toward Betelgeuse. You can see the star clearly now, a red giant burning at the hunter's shoulder, and the beam is almost there. Almost. Gaius appears in the stairwell. His face is bruised, bleeding, insane with rage. He's holding a torch, pulling it from one of the wall sconces. "If I can't control the light," he screams, "then no one will." He throws the torch toward the oil amphorae. Everything becomes slow. You see the torch tumbling through the air, flames streaming. You see Nessos diving toward it, too far away. You see the engineer letting go of the crank, reaching for a wet cloth on the floor. You see the amphora full of oil, waiting. And you see the beam, inches from Betelgeuse, from completing the pattern. You let go of the crank with one hand, grab a bronze sighting tool from the floor and throw it. The tool hits the torch mid-flight, knocks it toward the eastern opening. The torch tumbles through the broken wall, falls into the night, disappears. Gaius howls and charges. The engineer swings the wet cloth like a whip, catches him across the face. He stumbles, trips over the broken beam cart, goes down hard. You're back on the crank with both hands, pulling with everything left. The engineer rejoins you. The mirror groans, surrenders, begins to move again. The beam tracks the final inches, touches Betelgeuse, and the pattern completes. The world cracks open. Not metaphorically. The air splits, a vertical seam appearing in the centre of the lantern room, and through it you see water. Not harbour water, storm-tossed and grey. Moonlit water, calm and silver, leading away into distance. The seam is narrow, maybe 3 feet wide, but it extends from floor to ceiling, and when you look into it you see your city, your real city, your time waiting on the far side. Go! Nessos is pushing you toward the opening. The eye is passing. You only have seconds. Come with me. You grab his arm. Both of you, all of us. But the engineer shakes his head. This is your gatekeeper, shaped by your constellation, your stars. We don't belong there. Nessos. The boy smiles and he looks older suddenly, wiser. I'll be fine. I've always been fine. This is my time. He presses something into your hand, the star chart rolled tight, in case you need to find your way back. The tower shudders. The seam is already narrowing, the storm eye moving past. You can hear the wind building again outside, the rain returning. You look at Gaius, unconscious on the floor, at the engineer, bleeding but standing, at Nessos, brave and young and impossible, at the lantern room, the cracked mirror, the guttering fire that you've kept burning through the storm. Then you step through the seam. The transition is instant and brutal. One moment you're in the ancient lantern room, rain and oil, smoke and heat. The next you're standing on wet pavement, modern shoes splashing in a puddle, under squall clouds that are already breaking apart. The moon is visible, nearly full, and beneath it the harbour spreads out. Your harbour, with its breakwater and shipping lanes and the lights of buildings rising up the slopes, but different. The signs are different. You walk forward on shaking legs, following the waterfront toward where your apartment should be. The streets are familiar, the layout unchanged, but every sign you pass makes you stumble. Pharos Ward, where it should say El Anfushi. Hepta Stadium Road, where it should say El Corniche. Canopic Square, where the name has always been something else, something you can't quite remember. Your phone buzzes. A news notification. Municipal authorities confused by sudden appearance of alternate street names. Historians claim designations are historically accurate for Greco-Roman era Alexandria, but residents insist streets have always borne these names. Investigation ongoing. You reach into your pocket, find the bronze shard you didn't realise you'd grabbed. A piece of the mirror still warm, edges sharp, and the star chart, dry despite everything, its vellum soft beneath your fingers. Your building is where it should be, but the address plaque has been replaced. Instead of a number, it bears an inscription in Greek. Pharos, Pharos, home. Inside, your apartment is unchanged. Your furniture, your books, your coffee maker on the counter still half full from this morning. Or was it 3,000 years ago? The temporal headache makes you sit down hard on the couch. You pull out your phone, try to ground yourself. Social media is full of people discussing the street names, posting pictures of the new signs. Some people swear the names just appeared overnight. Others are certain they've always been there, that this is how Alexandria has always been labelled, that the old names were never real. You scroll through your own photos looking for evidence. There, a picture from last month, a selfie on the waterfront, and in the background you can just make out a street sign. You zoom in. The letters are blurred, but you can read enough. El Anfushi. Except when you blink, look again, the same sign says Pharos Ward. Both are real. Both have always been real. The city remembers both. You walk to your window, look out at the harbour. The Pharos is gone, of course. Collapsed in an earthquake a millennium and a half ago. The ruins buried under the Sate Bay fort. But you can see where it stood. The point of land jutting into the water. And in the moonlight, just for a moment, you see it. A ghost tower, a shadow in stone. Its light sweeping across the water in a pattern you know by heart. 7 stars. 1. Constellation. A circuit completed and never ending. You set the star chart on your desk beside your laptop. You place the bronze shard next to it, a paperweight from impossible history. Then you open your laptop and pull up a Starfinder app, the kind that overlays constellation lines on a camera view of the sky. The storm has cleared completely now. Through your window you can see Orion rising in the southeast, just as it should in November. Just as it always has. Betelgeuse, Rigel, the belt stars shining clear. The question forms before you can stop it. What if you trace the pattern in reverse? What if you could undo what you did, restore the names, separate the times that you've braided together? The app shows the inverse pattern, the lines running backward from Betelgeuse to Rigel to Mintaka. But would you? Could you? And what would happen to Nessos, to the engineer, to all the ships you saved by keeping the light burning? Would they blink out of existence, retroactively drowned, because you decided your present was more important than their past? Your phone buzzes again. Another news alert. Local historians celebrate rediscovery of ancient Alexandria's original street layout. City council debates whether to acknowledge historical names alongside modern designations. Some citizens report experiencing dual memories of the same locations. You are not alone in this. The whole city is learning to hold both truths, both timelines, both names. The coast refuses to forget. You close the Star app, close the laptop. The bronze shard catches the moonlight, throws a scatter of reflections across your wall, small broken beams that trace no pattern, follow no constellation, illuminate nothing but the space you're standing in. Outside, a ship's horn sounds in the harbour, answered by another further out. The sound of vessels finding their way home through the dark. The sound of lives saved by a light that should have gone out centuries ago but somehow, impossibly, still burns. You pick up the star chart, unroll it one more time. Nesos's notes are visible in the margins, his handwriting small and careful. At the bottom, almost hidden, a final line in Greek. The keeper who traces the stars keeps 2 times. The keeper who turns away keeps none. You don't have to decide tonight. Maybe you'll never decide. Maybe the question isn't whether to restore what was or preserve what is, but how to live in a city that remembers everything, that refuses the clean amnesia of history, that insists on holding all its names at once. You roll up the chart, place it in a drawer beside your own journals and maps and the accumulated debris of your impossible journey. Then you go to the kitchen, pour the old coffee down the sink and start a fresh pot. The smell is ordinary, grounding, real. Through the window the lights of Alexandria, ancient and modern, renamed and remembering, shimmer in the harbour haze. The Pharos is gone. The Pharos has always been there. Your city is 3,000 years old. Your city was founded yesterday. All of it true, all of it home. You carry your coffee to the window, watch the ships moving in the harbour, each one following a beam of light that might be lighthouse or memory, or something caught between. The bronze shard is still warm in your pocket, a piece of the mirror that's stitched 2 times together, and as you sip your coffee you wonder, on the next clear night, when Orion rises full and bright, will you go to the waterfront? Will you open the star app, trace the patterns in reverse, try to unravel what you've done, or will you trace the pattern again, strengthen the stitching, make permanent what was meant to be temporary, bind your present to its past so tightly that no one, not even you, can tell where one ends and the other begins? The question hangs in the air like salt, like heat, like the smell of oil and rain. Outside, the harbour keeps its secrets, the coast keeps its names, and somewhere in the space between moments, in the membrane between was and is, a young assistant named Nessos tends a light that will never go out, calling ships home through storms that haven't happened yet and have never stopped happening. You touch the window glass, leave a fingerprint on the cool surface. In the morning you'll go to the waterfront, you decide. You'll walk the renamed streets, read the new signs, let your mind hold both versions without choosing. You'll carry the star chart and the bronze shard. You'll remember the weight of the crank, the heat of the fire, the sound of Nessos calling angles while the storm tried to tear the world apart. And if you see the ghost of a lighthouse on the point, if you see its beams sweeping the harbour in a pattern that shouldn't exist, you'll know. Some things, once joined, can't be separated. Some lights, once kindled, burn forever. Some coasts remember everything, refuse to forget, and hold their names like tides, always moving, always returning, always both. The coffee is good, the night is quiet, the harbour is home, and high above, invisible in daylight but always present, Orion the hunter keeps his watch, his stars patient and eternal, waiting for the next keeper to trace the pattern, complete the circuit, find their way through the gate that opens only when the storm's eye centres on the beam and the mirror cracks and the impossible becomes, for one perfect moment, the only truth that matters. You finish the coffee as dawn starts to break. Pale grey light spreading across the water. You haven't slept. Every time you closed your eyes you saw the lantern room, the cracked mirror, Nessos's face as he pushed you toward the seam. The bronze shard in your pocket has finally cooled, but you keep touching it anyway, confirming its reality, its weight. Your phone rings. The sound is so normal, so mundane that you almost laugh. It's your colleague from the university, Dr. Yara Mansour, her voice bright with excitement, even at 6 in the morning. Have you seen the news? The street signs? Someone's claiming it's a mass hallucination, but I've been through the municipal archives all night and... She stops. Are you okay? You sound strange. I'm fine. The lie comes automatically. Just didn't sleep much. The storm? What storm? It's been clear all night. You look out at the harbour, at the breakwater still wet from waves, at the scatter of palm fronds on the street below. Evidence of the storm is everywhere. Except, according to Yara, there was no storm. You feel the headache building again, the temporal dissonance pressing against your skull. Never mind, you say. I'll meet you at the university. Give me an hour. You shower, trying to wash away the smell of oil smoke that probably isn't there, dress in clean clothes that feel wrong after the weight of wet linen. The bronze shard goes into your jacket pocket, the star chart you leave on the desk, but you take a photo of it first, just in case. The walk to campus takes you along the waterfront. In the growing light you can see the new signs clearly, brass plaques mounted beside the modern street signs, inscribed with Greek letters and their English translations: Pharos Ward, Hepta Stadium Road, Canopic Square. But it's the people's reactions that make you slow down, watching. A woman in a business suit stands in front of a sign, her face confused. She pulls out her phone, takes a picture, then checks something, a map app maybe, or old photos. Her lips move, sounding out the Greek letters. Then she shakes her head and keeps walking, and you see the moment the confusion smooths away, replaced by certainty. Of course the street is called Pharos Ward. It's always been called that. An old man sits on a bench staring at the harbour. As you pass he says, without looking at you, I remember when this was El Anfushi, my grandfather's shop. He stops, frowns. No, Pharos Ward. The shop was on Pharos Ward. But his hands are shaking and you see him grip the bench as if the ground might dissolve beneath him. You want to stop to tell him he's not crazy, that both memories are real. But what good would that do? What could you say that wouldn't make it worse? The university is in chaos. Students cluster in the courtyards, comparing photos on their phones. Faculty members argue in the hallways. You find Yara in her office, surrounded by open books and rolled maps, her grey hair escaping its usual neat bun. Look at this. She shoves a map toward you, an 18th century survey of Alexandria, the kind used by Napoleon's expedition. The street layout matches exactly with what's appearing on the signs, but here, she pulls up a modern map on her laptop. The modern names are still in the digital databases. Both sets of names exist, but people can only remember one at a time, depending on, I don't know what it depends on. Context? Focus? It's like some kind of quantum observation effect applied to memory. You lean over the old map, tracing the familiar streets. The Hepta Stadium Causeway, the Pharos Peninsula, the canopic way running east-west through the ancient city. Everything is where it should be, where it was 3,000 years ago, where it is now. The topology hasn't changed, only the labels, the names, the way people hold the space in their minds. There's something else, Yara's voice drops. I've been contacted by 3 other historians this morning, one in Athens, one in Rome, one in Istanbul. They're all reporting similar phenomena in their cities, ancient place names appearing overnight, dual memories, people insisting contradictory things are both true. She looks up at you, and her eyes are sharp, analytical. This isn't local. This is spreading. The bronze shard burns in your pocket. You think about the beam sweeping across the harbour, stitching times together. You think about the pattern, 7 stars, 1 constellation and wonder. What if other patterns exist? What if other keepers in other lighthouses on other coasts have been tracing their own constellations, completing their own circuits? What if the membrane between past and present is thinner than anyone knew, and all it takes is the right light, the right angle, the right storm? I need to check something, you tell Yara. The Kite Bay Fort. Is it open this early? The fort? Why? She sees your face, stops asking questions. Ahmed is doing a dawn survey this morning. I'll call him, tell him you're coming. You're already moving toward the door when she calls after you. Whatever you're looking for, be careful. I don't know what's happening, but it feels big. Like we're standing at the edge of something we don't understand. You nod. Keep walking. Behind you, you hear her picking up the phone, speaking in rapid Arabic, making arrangements for you to access the fort, the ruins, the place where the pharaohs stood for 16 centuries before earthquake and time brought it down. The fort sits at the end of the Pharos Peninsula, 15th century Mamluk stone built from the ruins of the ancient lighthouse. You've been here dozens of times. It's part of your research, part of why you came to Alexandria in the first place, chasing the ghost of the Pharos through historical records and archaeological digs. But now, walking toward it in the early morning light, it feels different, heavier, more real. Ahmed meets you at the gate, a young archaeologist with a careful smile and questions in his eyes. Dr. Mansour said you needed access to the underwater ruins. The dive team isn't scheduled until next week, but I can take you to the observation platform. Actually, I need to see the foundation maps, the surveys of the original Pharos structure before it collapsed. He looks surprised, but leads you inside, down stone corridors into the fort's administrative section. The survey maps are kept in climate-controlled cases, preserved from salt air and time. Ahmed spreads them out on a light table, the translucent sheets glowing. This is the most recent synthesis, he says, pointing to a detailed plan. Combines underwater sonar, historical descriptions, and the stone blocks we've recovered. The foundation was massive, truly massive, and here, his finger traces a circular structure at the centre. This was the base of the tower itself, 300 feet tall, maybe more. The ramp spiralled up inside, and at the top, the lantern room, you finish. Your voice sounds distant to your own ears. Bronze mirror, oil fire, visible for 30 miles. Exactly, though we still don't know exactly how the mirror mechanism worked. Descriptions are vague. Counterweights, rotation, some kind of focusing system. Lost technology, he grins. Every archaeologist's favourite words. You lean closer to the map, studying the foundation plan. The circular chamber, the spiral ramp. the careful engineering that kept the tower standing through storms and earthquakes for 1,600 years. And there, marked in the surveyor's careful notation, stress fractures in the stone, dating to the 8th century. Cracks that weakened the structure, made it vulnerable when the earthquake finally came. Cracks that look, to your eye, exactly like the pattern spiderwebbing across the bronze mirror in the lantern room. Ahmed, you say slowly, have there been any reports of unusual activity at the fort? Lights, sounds, anything strange? He hesitates. There was something last night. The night watchman reported seeing, well, he called it a glow, coming from the water, from the submerged ruins, blue-white, pulsing. He thought it was bioluminescence at first, but it was too regular, too structured. Ahmed shrugs. Probably just a dive light, someone exploring without permission. Or lightning, you think. Lightning rising from the water, reaching for a tower that no longer exists, completing a circuit 3,000 years in the making. You spend another hour with the maps, photographing them, comparing them to the star chart image on your phone. The pattern is there if you know how to look for it. The foundation structure, the way the stones were laid, the careful geometry, it all echoes something celestial, something planned. The Pharaoh's wasn't just a lighthouse. It was a marker, an anchor point, a place where the boundaries between times could be deliberately thinned. When you emerge from the fort, the sun is fully up, the harbour busy with morning traffic. You stand at the point where the Pharaohs once stood, looking down into the clear water at the massive stone blocks visible below. Tourist boats are already arriving, their guides reciting the history, built by Sostratus, dedicated to the saviour gods, one of the 7 wonders, destroyed by earthquake, gone forever. Except it's not gone. You stood in it. You cranked its mirror, kept its fire burning, saved lives by its light. It exists somewhere, in some layer of time that's been pressed against your present, like pages in a book. Your phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. You need to see this. Coffee shop on Hepta Stadium Road, corner of Canopic, now. No signature, no explanation. You should ignore it, should go back to the university, should talk to Yara about what you found in the foundation maps. But something in the message, the use of the new street names, the urgency, makes you change direction. The coffee shop is small, tucked between a pharmacy and a bookstore. You almost miss it because the sign above the door is in Greek letters, Cafeneo, coffee house. But the interior is modern, espresso machines, Wi-Fi passwords on chalkboards, students with laptops. The cognitive dissonance makes your head throb. A woman sits alone at a corner table. She's maybe 60, white hair cut short, wearing practical clothes that might have been fashionable 20 years ago. She sees you enter, raises a hand, and you recognise her, or think you do. Something about her face, her posture, triggers a memory that feels borrowed, impossible. Sit, she says when you reach the table. Her accent is strange, Greek underneath Arabic, underneath something else, layers of language stacked like sediment. You have questions, I have some answers, not all but some. Who are you? My name is Thalia. I was a keeper, like you. Not of the Pharaohs. I worked the lighthouse at Rhodes, the one that stood before the Colossus fell. I traced my pattern 40 years ago in 1985, during a hurricane that history says never reached the island. She smiles, thin and sad. But it did reach. I know it did. I remember. Your hand finds the bronze shard in your pocket. How did you know about me? Because the patterns are spreading. Every keeper who completes a circuit creates a ripple, a disturbance in the membrane. Others of us, there aren't many but there are some, we can feel it. A new joining, a new stitch in the fabric. She pushes a worn notebook across the table. This is what I know, what we've learned over the years. You open the notebook. The pages are filled with handwriting in multiple languages. Greek, Arabic, Latin, English, others you don't recognize. Maps, star charts, diagrams of lighthouse structures, and names. Dozens of names, each with a date and location. We call ourselves the keepers of the membrane, Thalia says, those who stood at the boundary and made the crossing. Each of us changed our cities, our coasts, our timelines. Each of us lives now in places that remember more than one history. Why? The question comes out harsh, desperate. Why does this happen? Why can a lighthouse, a mirror, A pattern of stars. Why can that change reality? Thalia leans back, her eyes distant. The ancient builders knew things we've forgotten. They understood that light is memory made visible, that attention shapes reality, that the boundaries between times are not walls but membranes, thin, permeable, waiting to be crossed. They built the lighthouses as transit points, as places where keepers could guide not just ships but moments, navigating between what was and what is. But the cost. You think of the renamed streets, the dual memories, the old man on the bench gripping tight to keep from falling through reality. People are confused, lost. Some of them can't reconcile the contradictions. Yes, Thalia's voice is hard now. That's the price. Every joining creates instability, cognitive dissonance. People caught between versions of their own lives. It fades eventually. The new names become normal, the old names become dreams, and most people forget there was ever a contradiction. She taps the notebook. But some don't forget. Some of us remember both, hold both, live between. You flip through the notebook, reading the entries. A keeper in Istanbul, 1995. Pattern traced during an eclipse. A keeper in Lisbon, 2003. Pattern traced during an earthquake. A keeper in Boston, 2011. Pattern traced during a nor'easter. Each one completed a constellation circuit. Each one stitched their present to their past. Each one left their city changed, remembering, renamed, rebuilt in the image of what it once was. What happens if we stop, you ask? If we refuse to trace the patterns, refuse to complete the circuits? Thalia's face hardens. Then the lighthouses stay dark. The ships founder. The lives that would have been saved are lost, and the past stays past, safely distant, unable to inform or complicate the present. She leans forward. Is that what you want? Clean amnesia? A world that forgets its own foundations? I want people to stop being confused. I want the old man on the bench to remember his grandfather's shop without feeling like he's losing his mind. Then teach him to hold both. Thalia's voice is fierce now. Teach everyone to hold both. That's the real work, not the tracing of patterns, but the integration afterward, helping people understand that they can remember multiple versions, that contradiction is not madness but depth, that a city can be both ancient and modern, that a coast can carry multiple names and still be home. You close the notebook, push it back across the table. I don't know if I can do that. You already are. By being here, by holding your memories of the Pharos alongside your memories of your apartment, your university, your morning coffee, you're living proof that the human mind is flexible enough, vast enough, to contain multitudes. She stands, picks up the notebook. Keep your bronze shard, keep your star chart, and when the confusion gets too heavy, remember, you chose to keep the light burning. You chose to save lives. Everything else is just consequence. She's gone before you can respond, disappearing into the morning crowd on Hepta Stadium Road. You sit alone at the table, the coffee she ordered for you growing cold, watching the street through the window. People walk past in both directions, some wearing modern clothes, some wearing what might be ancient dress, or might be contemporary fashion influenced by ancient styles. The longer you watch, the harder it becomes to tell which is which. Your phone rings. Yara again, her voice tight with barely controlled excitement. You need to come back to the university immediately. We've found something, an inscription in the basement archives. It mentions the pharaohs, the mirror, and a keeper who traced patterns to guide ships through impossible storms. It's dated to 48 BCE, and it uses your name, in an inscription from 48 BCE. I'm coming, you say, already moving toward the door. The walk back to campus is a blur. Your mind is racing, trying to process what Thalia said, what the inscription might mean, what it says about causality and time in the strange loop you're caught in. If your name appears in an ancient inscription, does that mean you were always destined to complete the pattern? Or does the pattern's completion reach backward, rewriting history to include you? Yara meets you at the archive entrance, practically vibrating with energy. It's in the Ptolemaic collection, texts rescued from the old library before it burned. We've had them for years, but they're so damaged, so fragmentary. We've only translated about 30%. She leads you downstairs, through security doors, into the climate-controlled vault where Alexandria's rescued history lives in acid-free boxes and carefully regulated air. The inscription is on a piece of limestone, the stone itself cracked and water-stained. But the Greek letters are still legible, carved deep. Yara has already set up a translation on her laptop, the ancient and modern texts side by side. You read, "In the 3rd year of Queen Cleopatra, when the great storm came from Libya, and ships were lost in darkness, the keeper whose name is, here your name appears, spelled phonetically in Greek letters, traced the pattern of the hunter and brought light to the harbour. Many lives were saved. The mirror was damaged, but the city remembers. The keeper returned through the gate of storms to their own time, and we who witnessed give thanks to the gods who sent them." The room spins. Yara catches your arm, her grip tight. "Are you okay? You look like you're going to pass out." "When was this inscription found?" Your voice sounds far away. 1982. It's been in the collection ever since. I remembered it this morning because of the storm language, the mirror reference. I thought it might be relevant to the street names phenomenon. She's studying your face. "But you already knew about this, didn't you? Or you were there?" You can't answer. The temporal loop is complete. You travelled back to 48 BCE, kept the light burning, saved ships, completed the pattern. The ancient Alexandrians witnessed your work and recorded it in stone. That stone was discovered in 1982, stored in archives, and this morning Yara remembered it and connected it to the street names that only appeared because you completed the pattern last night. The cause is, the effect is the cause. "I need air," you managed to say. Yara follows you up the stairs, out into the courtyard. The morning has turned bright and hot, the Mediterranean sun burning away the last traces of storm, or the storm that maybe never happened, or the storm that happened 3,000 years ago, or all of these simultaneously. "Tell me," Yara says. She's not asking. "Tell me what happened." So you do. You tell her about the impossible rain, the warm hissing on hot stone, the cracked mirror and the oil fire. You tell her about Nessos and the engineer and Tribune Gaius. You tell her about the pattern, the sweeps, the way each connection renamed a piece of the harbour. You tell her about the storm eye, the vertical seam, the choice to step through or stay. When you finish, Yara is silent for a long time. Then she says, "Show me the bronze shard." You pull it from your pocket. In the sunlight it gleams, the surface still bearing traces of silver plating, the reflective coating that helped the mirror throw its beam. Yara takes it carefully, turns it over in her hands, studies the edges. "This is authentic," she says finally. "Ptolemaic-era bronze work, the alloy consistent with samples we've recovered from the lighthouse ruins. It shouldn't exist. We have no intact pieces of the mirror, only fragments too small to analyse." She hands it back to you. "But it does exist, which means your story is true, or true enough, or true in a way that our current understanding of causality can't accommodate. What do I do?" Yara sits on a bench, gestures for you to join her. "That depends on what you want. You could hide the shard, burn the star chart, pretend this never happened. Eventually your memories would fade, or you'd convince yourself it was a dream, a hallucination brought on by stress and studying too many ancient texts." She looks out at the campus, at the students moving between buildings. "Or you could accept what happened, study it, learn from it, help others understand how to hold both timelines, both sets of memories, both truths." Thalia said something similar, that the real work is the integration. "Thalia?" Yara's head snaps up. "You met Thalia Anagnos, the lighthouse historian from Rhodes? You know her?" Everyone in lighthouse research knows of her, or knew of her. She disappeared in 1985 during a hurricane that supposedly never made landfall. Her papers were found in her office, scattered, unfinished. Some of her colleagues said she'd been obsessed with ancient navigation techniques, with the idea that lighthouses were more than just navigational aids. Yara's voice is careful now, measured. "If you met her this morning, that means she succeeded. She completed her pattern, made her crossing, and has been living between times for 40 years. The implications settle over you like weight. Thalia didn't just complete a pattern. She's been doing the integration work, the teaching work, for 4 decades. And if she sought you out this morning, that means she sees something in what you did, some potential for connection, or collaboration, or continuation." "There are others," you say, remembering the notebook. "Keepers in other cities, other lighthouses, all of us tracing patterns, all of us stitching times together." Yara stands abruptly. "Then we need to document this, properly, scientifically, before the memories fade or become unreliable. I want to record your testimony, map the correlations between the pattern you traced and the street names that appeared, analyse the inscription and the bronze shard. She stops herself, takes a breath. If you're willing. This is your experience, your story. I won't exploit it for research without your consent. You look at the bronze shard in your hand, at the way it catches the light and throws small reflections. You think about Nissos, calling angles through the storm. You think about the old man on the bench, gripping tight to keep from falling through reality. You think about all the people in Alexandria and Athens and Rome and Istanbul who woke up this morning to find their cities renamed, their memories doubled, their certainties undermined. Yes, you say. Yes, we should document it. We should understand it. And then we should figure out how to help people live with it. The next week blurs into a routine of interviews and analysis. Yara records your testimony in exhaustive detail, asking you to describe every moment from the first warm rain to the step through the seam. She brings in colleagues, carefully vetted, sworn to confidentiality, who examine the bronze shard, study the star chart photograph, compare your account to historical records of the pharaohs. The evidence accumulates. The alloy composition of the shard matches other Ptolemaic bronzes. The handwriting on your star chart photograph, when analysed by paleography experts, is consistent with 1st century BCE scribal practice. The inscription mentioning your name has been carbon dated, radiocarbon tested, verified as authentically ancient. But it's the map correlations that convince the skeptics. When Yara overlays your constellation pattern onto a map of Alexandria, the points where the beam touched correspond exactly to the locations where new street names appeared. 7 major districts, 7 stars, 7 points where the membrane between times thinned enough for names to bleed through. It's not random, Yara says on the 5th day, spreading printouts across her office floor. The pattern isn't just arbitrary, it's deliberate, structured, mathematical. The ancient builders knew exactly what they were doing. They encoded the constellation into the city's geometry, so that anyone who traced the pattern from the lighthouse would reconnect Alexandria to its founding moment, its original names, its first identity. You kneel beside her, studying the maps. But why? Why design a system that lets future keepers rewrite the present? Not rewrite. Remember! Yara taps one of the printouts. Think about it. Cities change constantly. Names shift, borders move, populations turn over. Within a few generations, the original identity of a place can be completely lost. But if you build markers, anchor points, ways for future keepers to reach back and reconnect, she looks up at you. Then the city never forgets. It holds all its names, all its histories, all its versions of itself. A city that refuses to forget, you murmur, echoing your thoughts from that first night. Exactly. And if Thalia is right, if there are keepers doing this in other cities, then we're looking at a global network of memory anchors. Places where the past can be accessed, integrated, kept alive in the present. Yara sits back on her heels. It's beautiful. Terrifying. But beautiful. The news coverage of the street names phenomenon continues, growing stranger. Linguists note that the Greek names appearing on signs are not standard ancient Greek, but a hybrid. Classical vocabulary with modern syntax, as if the language itself is being forced to bridge the temporal gap. Psychologists report an uptick in patients describing dual memories, people convinced they remember 2 versions of the same event, 2 names for the same place, 2 histories that can't both be true but somehow are. Most people adapt within days. The human mind is resilient, flexible, eager to create coherent narratives even from contradictory data. The old names fade into dreams or are reframed as what we used to call it before we learned the historical names. The new names become normal, crisis averted, or at least absorbed. But some people don't adapt. Some people come to the university, to Yara's office, seeking answers. An elderly woman who swears her grandmother told her stories about the pharaohs, about a keeper who appeared during a storm and saved ships with impossible light. A young man who found a bronze fragment on the beach and felt it burn in his hand, felt it calling to something. A child who draws pictures of lighthouses that haven't existed for millennia, tracing beam patterns that match your constellation exactly. You meet with them, carefully, one at a time. You don't tell them everything. That would be too much, too fast. But you acknowledge their memories, validate their experiences, teach them what Thalia taught you. That contradiction is not madness, but depth. That a city can hold multiple truths. that the past and present are not separate countries but neighbours, sometimes overlapping, always in conversation. It's exhausting work. By the end of each day, your head throbs with temporal dissonance, your memories of the Pharos fighting with your memories of modern life, the smell of oil smoke haunting your apartment. But slowly you're learning to hold both. To walk streets that have two names and feel comfortable with the ambiguity. To look at the harbour and see both galleys and cargo, ships without needing to choose which is real. On the 8th day, Thalia comes back. You're in your apartment reviewing notes when she appears on your balcony. She doesn't knock, doesn't announce herself. She's just suddenly there, as if she stepped through a seam only she can see. "You're doing well," she says without preamble. "Better than I did my first week. I spent 3 days in bed, convinced I was losing my mind. Some days I still think I am." You gesture to a chair. "Coffee?" "Please." You make coffee. The ritual is grounding, normal, real, and bring 2 cups to the balcony. The harbour spreads below, afternoon sun turning the water gold. From here you can see the fort, the point where the pharaoh stood. You've been watching it every day, waiting to see if the ghost light will appear again, if the pattern will call to you, if you'll feel the urge to trace it once more. "It will," Thalia says, reading your mind or your face. The pattern doesn't release you. Once you've traced it, it becomes part of you. You'll feel it pulling, especially during storms, especially at night when Orion rises. She sips her coffee. "The question is whether you'll answer. What happens if I do? If I trace the pattern again?" The stitching deepens. The integration becomes more complete. More people start to remember both timelines, hold both truths. Eventually, after enough repetitions, enough keepers, enough patterns, the membrane might dissolve entirely. Past and present might merge into a single continuous moment, all times accessible from any point. She sets down her cup. That's the theory anyway. None of us have lived long enough to see it happen. And if I don't answer, if I refuse to trace it again, then the current integration stabilizes at this level. The street names become permanent but don't spread further. The dual memories fade for most people, leaving only those of us who were directly involved with the full cognitive complexity. Thalia shrugs. It's not a wrong choice. Every keeper has to decide how deep they want to go, how much integration they can live with. You watch the harbour, thinking. A container ship is making its way toward port, guided by modern navigation systems and harbour pilot boats. No lighthouse necessary, no desperate ships feeling for shore in the dark. The Pharaoh's is obsolete, gone, a historical curiosity, except it's not gone. It lives in the limestone inscription, in the bronze shard in your pocket, in Nisos's handwriting on the star chart, in your muscles that still remember the weight of the crank. "I want to find the others," you say. "The keepers in Istanbul, Lisbon, Boston, all the cities in your notebook. I want to understand what they're experiencing, how they're managing the integration, what patterns they traced." Thalia smiles, and it transforms her face, makes her look younger. "I was hoping you'd say that. There's a gathering every 5 years at the International Association of Lighthouse, Authorities Conference. We meet separately, quietly, those of us who have made the crossing. The next meeting is in 3 months in Copenhagen." She pulls a card from her pocket, actual paper, cream-coloured, with an address printed in silver ink. "Come, bring your research, your questions, your bronze shard, meet the others, learn what we know." You take the card, feel its weight, its reality. 3 months. Enough time to finish documenting your experience, to help more people integrate their dual memories, to prepare questions for those who've lived between times longer than you have. Enough time to decide whether you want to trace the pattern again, deepen the stitching, pull more of the past into the present. "Thank you," you say. Thalia stands, moves toward the balcony railing. For a moment you think she's going to step over, fall 3 stories to the street, but instead she just looks out at the harbour, at the fort, at the ghost of the pharaohs that only keepers can see. "One more thing," she says. "The boy, Nessos. He was real as you or me. But he also wasn't. The people you met in the past, they're echoes, maybe. Memories given form. They exist in that moment, in that pattern, but they don't have continuous existence the way we do." She turns to face you. Don't grieve for him. He served his purpose. He called the angles, kept you on track, pushed you through the seam. That's all he needed to be. He seemed so alive, so real. All memories are alive when you're inside them. That's the gift and the curse of the pattern. It makes history tangible, present, immediate. But it's still history, still past. She reaches out, touches your shoulder briefly. You came back. That's what matters. You made the crossing and returned, bringing the past with you instead of being consumed by it. Not every keeper manages that. She leaves the way she came, stepping toward the railing and then somehow not being there anymore, vanished into afternoon light and salt air. You sit alone on the balcony, holding the card, watching the harbour until sunset paints everything gold and purple and the first stars begin to appear. That night, for the first time since the crossing, you sleep without dreams of the pharaohs. When you wake, the temporal headache is gone, replaced by clarity. You know what you need to do. Over the next 3 months, you become the translator. The person who explains to confused citizens that yes, both names are real, both memories are valid, both truths can coexist. You work with Yara to create workshops, public lectures, accessible explanations of what happened and why. You don't mention the pattern, the lighthouse, the storm. Those details would be too much, too strange. But you talk about memory, about how cities hold multiple histories, about the human capacity to contain contradictions without breaking. Slowly, it works. The panic subsides. People stop reporting to psychologists with dual memory syndrome. The new street. Names become naturalized, folded into daily life. You overhear conversations where someone says, "Meet me at Canopic Square," and no one questions it. No one remembers that the name didn't exist 3 months ago. Alexandria has integrated its past. The coast refuses to forget. You book your flight to Copenhagen on a clear night in early autumn. Orion is rising in the east, brilliant and familiar, and as you watch through your apartment window you feel it. The pull, the pattern, the constellation calling. Not urgent, not demanding, just present. A reminder that the gate is always there, waiting, that you could trace the pattern again if you chose, deepen the stitching, bring more of the past forward. But not tonight. Tonight you have work to do in the present, questions to ask, keepers to meet, patterns to understand. The bronze shard stays in your pocket, warm and real. The star chart stays in your drawer, preserved between sheets of acid-free paper. And the memory of Nessos calling angles through the storm stays in your mind, neither forgotten nor pursued, held in the space between was and is where all keepers learn to live. Below your window, the harbour glitters with reflected light. No lighthouse sweeps its beam across the water. The Pharaohs is gone, has been gone for 1,500 years, will always be gone. Except it's not. It's there, in the memorial plaque on the fort, in the tourist guidebooks, in Yara's research files and the limestone inscription and the bronze shard you carry, in the renamed streets and the dual memories and the way Alexandria now holds both its ancient and modern identities without choosing between them. The coast refuses to forget, and so do you. The next story is about to begin. Please relax and enjoy.